Hi everyone, this is Carly Watson, and this is a short companion video to the What Should You Be Doing in the Post Round lecture, where we'll talk about how to make a speech doc for maximum impact. After a debate, a judge will frequently call for evidence or call for a compiled document of cards read, and you'll have to put that together for them. There are basically two schools of thought in how people approach making a compiled doc for the judge. The first is you include everything that you read in the debate. The upside is you're a lot less likely to miss something. The other choice is to only include the cards that would be relevant to the judge's decision. In my opinion, that's objectively the best because you can use it to guide the judge in their decision making. And the reality is that with decision times and everything else, judges want to be able to get through their decision as efficiently as possible. This is definitely the more user-friendly approach. So assuming you're going with option 2, the relevant cards approach, let's walk through this document. The first thing to start with is the name. This is named Speech Ev 6:15, 1 p.m. Not ideal. You want to make sure that you save things in a way that are easy for the judge to track back. So in this case, I'll just save it. You would probably save it to your speech docs folder, something that you had on your computer. I'll just save it to my desktop. And you want to name it something useful. Affirmative cards, then tournament, Green Hill, what round it is, MSU LWF versus Emory IW neg. And that way the judge, when they have a billion documents open on their computer, knows what this is. If you open 2 documents after the round and you're the judge, and they're both called Judge Doc, it's really difficult to efficiently decide since you'd have to keep switching between them to try to find what you're looking for. The next thing is you want to group relevant arguments. So as you can see in the nav pane, we have some election stuff, some state stuff, and we kind of want to make sure that we sort them. So let's get all of the election stuff in one spot and create a header for it, and then all of the state stuff and create a header for it. That way the judge can decide each section of the debate more efficiently. In part 2, we'll talk a little bit more about how to label things with F6 headers. So the first thing is to make sure that you group relevant cards together. So for the elections dissent, we have other issues thump, those go together. We have the thumper, that kind of goes with the other thumper arguments, and then impact defense. For the naming of the F6 headers, we want to always be sure that you include the speech name in it because that helps the judge track back when the card was read. So you can see that has it for the 2AC on other issues, but it doesn't have it for CJR thumper. And so we might want to add something like 2AC. And then this impact defense, we probably also read in the 2AC. But we want to go beyond that, right? Because it still doesn't really help guide the judge's decision in any meaningful way. So maybe we want them to think about other issues thump and the CJR thumper as one cohesive debate. And that was the thrust of what we went for in the 2AR. So in order to create a thematic grouping in the judge's mind, we can use similar F6 headers. So for example, 2AC, thumper, other issues. And then maybe we wanted to say 2AC, thumper, CJR. That creates a grouping in the judge's mind, and we'll change the 1AR too. That way, if they go to decide the thumper debate, they're all kind of grouped together. Maybe a big thrust of the negative argument was that CJR is key, and we read this card to answer that implicitly in the 1AR. We can move that to its own header. So you might have 1AR, thumper, A2, CJR not key, or CJR key. This calls attention specifically to the judge and says, look, we have an answer to the argument that CJR is key, and we read a card on it. And so it can help guide their decision. Now we have all of the thumper arguments together, and then we also have retrenchment impact defense here. This is a great example in the state's counterplan of wanting to weed out things that we didn't go for in the 1AR and to adding a guiding F6 header. So we probably didn't go for just a perm and state fiat and solvency deficit. Let's just say we went for the solvency deficit. This is a great example of a place to change the F6 header and have it say 2AC, doesn't solve federal prisons key. So that creates in the judge's mind a clear explanation of what this card is, what its argument is, and why they would want to be reading it in the post round. Probably didn't read all of this stuff that's unhighlighted and super long. So make sure you delete anything that you didn't read. Now let's just kind of look at the nav pane. It's okay, but not great. And you don't want the judge to open your nav pane and think, man, these people are scrubs. So, just small things like standardizing the way that you label things can make a huge difference in the judge's mind. You also want to make sure that you have a good order to things. So in this case, you want all of the thumper arguments to be first because that was the main argument that you went for. And then the retrenchment impact defense is later because it wasn't as central to the 2AR. Maybe you think that the state's solvency deficit is more important than anything on elections. In that case, you would want to sort it so that the state's counterplan evidence is before everything else. One other thing I want to mention is that you can use things like stars or other things to kind of call attention, but you want to do so sparingly. So maybe you thought that this 1AR card was really good. It's an example of someplace where you could add a star. If we're being realistic, judges do notice things like that. And so having small things that call attention to certain cards can matter at the margins when judges are deciding debates. So after you get everything together, you take a look at it. I think this looks pretty good. And then you save it and send it to the judge. You want to do it as quickly as possible, but you also want your document to look good. The reality is that I think we would all judges would say that the post-round speech doc doesn't matter that much, but a lot of debates are decided at the margins. And so it's important that you maximize the way that you guide the judge's decision with your post-round speech doc. Everyone has heard the phrase, you don't get a 3AR or 3NR to answer that, but you should really think about the speech doc as basically being your 3AR or your 3NR, where you can sort of guide the judge's decision as they read your evidence. Thanks so much for watching.